you everyone for coming, and also the people watching online and following on Twitter, and I'm sure Jessica would like me to also say that she's not being ignorant, she's tweeting as we go along. This is the third in our series of free exchange events. This series is part of the Outdoor Institute of Art, which is an alternative art school with a curriculum which consists of discussions, skills, knowledge, sharing events between artists, experts in relevant fields, the art sector and members of the public. We like our free exchange events to take place in a relevant location. So this evening we are in Johnny's Happy Place, which is based in the Keystone Centre. The Keystone Centre is managed by Youth Works, a charity that provides community-based wraparound education, advocacy, support and recreation for young people and their families. Johnny's Happy Place, CIC, inspires well-being through community and creativity. It was set up in memory of Johnny Mackay, a young man who is highly creative and had undiagnosed mental health problems and who sadly took his own life in 2014. Johnny's Happy Place is a safe space open to all who are having a tough time. Tonight our theme is art and well-being, and our speakers are Damian Hebron and Filippos Tsitsopoulos. I have practiced.
Great.
So Damien has worked in the field of art, health and well-being for 15 years. He runs a successful hospital arts programme and established and developed the London Arts and Health Forum, where he is currently director. Filippos is a multidisciplinary artist who is exploring the limits of theatre and painting since 1990, with installations and theatrical performances at Tate Modern, the Serpentine Gallery, Factor Liverpool and Alt National Gallery in Berlin. I think I've got that right, maybe, among others.
Yeah. So.
Earlier this year, his new project, Is Art Lonely, was exhibited in Ostend in Belgium. I'd now like to invite Damien and Filippos to introduce themselves further and also to tell us a bit about their interest and viewpoints in art and well-being, after which we'll open the discussion out to yourselves. Okay, so Damien, if I could come to you first.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Hello everybody. Yes, my name is Damian Hebron, and I do two jobs. And I wanted to talk about hospitals and the health and well-being, and I'm interested in the idea that this is the evening is about art and well-being, and I think there's a distinction between health and well-being, and sometimes the two things can be conflated, and we can consider that good health equals good well-being. And actually, I think well-being is something that you can experience at any point of your life, regardless of your physical or mental health. But well-being can be something that directly influences both your physical and your mental health. And I've spent the last 15 or so years trying to sort of bring the arts to bear on health and well-being. So, as Emma said, I run a hospital arts programme in Cambridge, and I also run a charity which campaigns around the value of the arts in health and well-being. And by the arts, I talk about all art forms and both the sort of consumption or being an audience for art, but also about the active participation in art. And because Filippos is going to talk from an artist's perspective, I thought I would start by talking about an artist. So I wanted to talk about this artist, who is an artist called Grunwald. And this is an amazing work of art called the Isenheim altarpiece, which is in a museum in Colmar in Alsace. And it's an extraordinary altarpiece. An altarpiece is a large work of art that can be opened up and reveal different points in the liturgical calendar. And it contains a huge number of images and details. And it was commissioned by the Antonine monks. So this is St. Anthony, who features on the altarpiece, being tortured. And it includes incredibly kind of graphic imagery. And the monks, the Antonine monks, were they were nurses essentially. So they had monasteries across Europe, and they were particularly skilled at nursing people who were suffering from ergotism. So ergotism is a rare, a very rare fungal disease. It's a fungus that's contained in rye and other cereals, and when that is baked and people eat it, they effectively are kind of eaten from within. And it sounds horrific, and it probably is. People had huge visions. It was also known as St. Anthony's fire, and they came out in giant pustules all over their bodies. It was horrific. And the monks used to set up monasteries along pilgrim routes, and they would nurse people. And it was fatal, so people died when they got this disease. And so I'm interested in the idea that the monks would have wanted to commission an artwork like this, so you can kind of see the sort of graphic nature of the imagery, that they would commission this as some means of supporting the patients that they were trying to serve. And I kind of think, the images are incredibly graphic, and in fact there's one figure who's in the corner of the picture with St. Anthony, with the distended stomach and the very kind of frail limbs and the pustules all over his body, who, by all accounts, that is a very accurate description of what somebody experiencing ergotism would eventually look like. So this artwork that they commissioned, this is about 1512 that they commissioned this. This artwork was commissioned to support their work nursing people, and yet it contains these incredibly graphic, horrific kind of just depictions of people experiencing this illness. And it prompts a question, I think, in that what did the monks think, and what did Grunwald, the artist, think this was going to achieve? Kind of displaying this sort of graphic nature of illness to people who were experiencing ill health. And I think the solution for me is literally in the kind of word communion. So it is some sense that people could see themselves depicted in this way, could see themselves depicted in the same way that Christ, they were all deeply religious, that Christ and the saints they'd experienced illness, and the graphic nature of the crucifixion is incredible. That in some way their pain and their suffering was put into a context of for them kind of religious belief and a sense of where their pain would ultimately leave them, which was to salvation. And I think that notion of communion, not in the kind of religious sense, but in the sense of how we share space, how we share stories, and also that sense of seeing ourselves in the context of a wider story is where the arts kind of come in around well-being. And I think both in terms of engaging with the work of artists, where you might see your story told in some way, you might find your a sense that someone else has experienced this suffering, this pain before, or this joy, or this kind of the fact that you can kind of temper your sense of where you are in the world through the arts, and that perhaps through expressing yourself through the arts you can tell your own story and you can share that. And working in hospital, we proactively give patients opportunities to use the arts as a means of sharing their stories, and that can be literally through, we have a dance program at the hospital, so people will be involved in dance, and then through that staff and their relatives might offer, the dance program is specifically for people with a cognitive impairment, most of them living with a dementia. It will be about them finding an opportunity to express themselves in a way that people may not have seen before, and it's a way of people sharing, communing with other people. Right. So Grunwald, that's so 1512, but there's a long time before that was the Greeks. The Greek god of medicine was called Asclepius, and Asclepius, the symbol for Asclepius, he was often depicted with a staff with a snake entwined around it, and that's still That's the symbol for the World Health Organization.
I went to Athens and heard all about him.
And was it the staff and the snake and?
Yeah, it was, but it was just really interesting because he's like a legend or a myth, but then he probably could have been a real man.
Yeah.
I didn't know which one it was, and I was talking to the guide about it because he was very much an advocate for the arts being part of the well-being and healing process. So it was about physical body. So he created a place, didn't he, where in the myth, where people go for physical exercise, for nutritional, the herbs and everything, but then also the cultural side, the sort of like the arts, enjoying the arts, and that was essential. The three things were essential for well-being.
Exactly. I could give up.
I can't believe it, because I was like, I couldn't remember the guy's name, and you just said it, and I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, he had 5 daughters, and his daughters each represent some aspect of the different the kind of Greek view of what was required for wellness, for well-being, and they were, one was called hygeia, so kind of hygiene, cleanliness. One was around sanitation, one was around recovery, and the final daughter was panacea. So the universal panacea was through beauty, splendor, magnificence, and adornment. I think it is exactly that. And I think there is something that's happened certainly in the UK or in a sort of Western sense of medicine, where we've split those things apart, and we've ended up with a sense that wellness can be provided by all those, by hygiene, by cleanliness, and actually there is a job to be done in terms of fusing that back together, I think. So I think that's ultimately what the work that I do at the hospital and what a lot of people who are working in this area are trying to achieve, is to sort of try and stitch kind of creativity, a sense of beauty back into what we mean when we talk about health and well-being. So if that's just got to kick us off.
Thank you, Damien. Filippos?
Yeah. Hi, hello. Okay, but starting with these wonderful things, I just remember now about the ancient Greece, and I just had in mind now that incredible thing that we show in the Greek vases, which somehow related with the thing that I will talk today. That we have all the figures, especially on all the Greek vases, even they are red or in another color, that they're looking sideways. All of them, they are looking sideways. Then there are some very few people, some very few heroes on the vases that they're looking in front. They are the people that they will face death. Or through the mythology, or to whatever other thing that it will happen to them. If they are mythology, everybody knows that, so they know that Achilles, in that particular scene, he will look in front, while all the other warriors, they will look sideways, or Hercules, or whatever. This is something different that I would like to bring through ancient Greece, which is the relation of the theater and the relation of what happened behind that sidewalk, that face that is looking at you, and at the same time he's looking somebody else which is behind you, and he's looking somebody which is at the end of the road, which is death. And what happened to, and what is the relation if that person is an artist, and from which part it will start in that trip. For example, in ancient Greece, they were starting, for example, the actors, they were starting from, didn't start from the backstage to play theater. They were start from the center of the stage. There was like a small fire, it's called thymeli, and they're asking special permission to Hades, who was the god of the dead, to play, to talk about heroes, to talk about legend, to talk about people that are not live anymore, but Their tradition is, their memory is still on the text. So we have to see them. Then we see for the first time the idea of the mask, of what happened to the human face, to the mask that is covering our real face. The actor, which is a normal person, a mask which comes, the historical person, or the no person, or the no theater, or whatever thing. Then the relation is that we create, in that condition, we create a lie, and we base that lie on the truth, which is our real face, and with that new face lie, we decide to say the truth. And another truth, theatrical truth or real truth, or under which condition of art. And in that relation that we create ourselves with the truth, finally, is, how to say, is an issue that we can fight sometimes so much. So sometimes there is something that divides us because we can go further to this direction, and this is the madness. This how that thing that we can reach, we can approach, we can face what happened on the other side of that thing. We want to have more, we want to achieve more, we want to go more in the art, we are part of it, and then we are enclosed in a labyrinth, and we don't know how to get out. All the things are also related in art, but anyway, let's imagine that if you have a mask, you can get rid of this mask from your face. It's so easy. You can rid of all the things that you have. I usually interpret this madness, this idea of all that things that comes from a universe, that close up of the universe, that comes stuck to your face, with the symbolism of elements that we can feast them, for example, like lobsters, like fishes or whatever, elements that we can take from the ground. For example, that maybe some of them they can, the symbol could be the moon, for example, if we see the tarot cards and the lobster is appear in the moon. So here we have a mask of one of my creatures, let's say, that I'm wearing those masks, and I punish myself. I create all the possible difficulties that we can have, 20 kilos of weight in your face, or more, because they are real, and with all that huge weight, you try to play theater. I try to play theater. Why want to do that? I don't know. I know. I know. The reason is that is the idea of somehow a relation with the father, who was actor, and the relation with the trauma, which is happen when sometimes you think that there are so many things in your family that you're missing, and you can't go back to take them back and to get the time that is already spent. That thing means that, of course, I saw so many rehearsals on theater due to my father, who was actor, every day, almost, when he was playing, from Barry to Beckett to whatever, playing the Pythagoras and all ancient theaters. And sometimes when I went away to Madrid, that I lived, and then to Liverpool, then of course my father died after. I found that it was a distance of years that I had no way to bridge that distance. And so I decided to play to text that my father was acting, to wear those masks and to cover that distance and to speak with him. Then I create a big amount of work like this that leads me to a kind of craze. It was like a maniac situation that I couldn't escape. But anyway, I get rid of it, I escape, I found my way to sort it out, I create art, and then in the next step, I found it that this is a way that I can do art, that I can express my feeling under the mask, under another face. Then it was some other people that would say to me, look, Filippos, you are sad, why you didn't smile? So I said, okay, I will put a smile. So I put this. Because it's very tragic, the thing that you're doing, so you have to smile more. I said, okay, I will smile. Now you will see what happened to the smile. And of course, the other part of what is the remaining of all the thing is what happened to your face when is damaged after of performance or after of videos or after all the intensity of all the things. There are some marks that you have here to your face and your face is hurting you. Okay, it's not bothering me. I mean, that is part of the thing that I'm doing. The thing is that when I'm going to the studio, I close my eyes and I simply touch my face and I get some big papers or I draw all the lines of pain that they are in my face and I create my drawings. Most of them with eyes closed because it's necessary in order to feel the space and in order not to have all the things, all your senses there, because you don't need them anymore. They are already performed for you in your performance or you were doing live. And somehow in all that thing, I have time.
You're fine?
Yeah, I'm all right. And sometime in all that situation comes the history of art, which is always there. And we can escape, and you decide that whether or not you're part of that history, and so you wonder, are you alone with that history? Are you alone with art? Art is a lonely place, or art is something lonely, or we are lonely with the art. So one of the performances that I did last year was in the Wallace collection, when I perform a text and a song for lonely paintings of the Wallace collection. Dressed with with a flower mask, imagine myself as if I was one vase full of flowers that was there and you wear that vase on your face. Or to be part of the vase of the ancient Greeks and be one more hero that faced death. That was sort of the...
Okay, thank you, Filippos. So now we'll open up the free exchange, so our audience is welcome to join in, ask our speakers questions, or equally sit back and listen. We also are welcoming questions from our Twitter audience, and Jessica will be tweeting as we go along. So yes, off we go.
Off you go.
So, is there anything you'd like to discuss between you? Has anything come up, Damien, with what Filippos says, or vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, you talked about kind of masks as being a means of getting closer to the truth, but also as a means of kind of enabling you to sort of almost sneak up on the truth. Is that fair? Is that like a? Would you say that's?
Yeah, it's something which is at the same time is revealing something
by
hiding it.
Yeah.
You're revealing by hiding. By hiding something, you're revealing something different.
And how did you first come upon that as a process, as a sort of means?
Yeah, it was the first thing that I wanted to avoid was the mask of the ancient Greek theater, who was like a round mask that it was come to your face and it was blocking your face. You don't see anything and you don't have anything. So I started to construct layers on my face, like collars. Then I can have the flexibility of having a real face, or somehow to feel that everything can be moved. And I can have a voice, and I still have my voice, which is not be altered. I can have this voice. So in that way, I have a live mask, something which is not comes like if I'm talking from the other side of the wall, and I have a wall here, and you can hear a voice we don't know from where, but it's that person that comes under a new face. And sometimes when I look at myself in the camera, I was seeing that in some performances, the thing was happening real. I mean, that face was alive, was really alive, and I could feel it was alive because all the muscles that was moving at the same time, and it was not technological, of course, it was not something special technology, but it was happened because of the emotion and the drama and what happened there. And then I discovered that it was not only the mask, it was really the text that I was using to put a fire to the feeling, to explode the feeling. And then that feeling comes in front of the mask. And you see a lobster, that thing that you see there, you should laugh. Nobody's laughing. And that thing is tragic in my case, that is nobody's laughing when I'm performing. Except one time that I had an octopus, it was a big octopus, and I smashed the octopus in my face, and suddenly they didn't laugh, but the octopus was falling on the floor, so I was walking and I was slipped over the octopus, so they was laughing. It was the only time that I was laughing in my life, and I wanted to have, because sometimes I play with the idea of the comic, or what can be comic, or what can be tragic. The hell of Geronimus Bosch can be comical if you are looking in the right distance. I mean that if he's not there, if you are not there, if it's not real, if it's a painting, if it's real, then the things are different. So the distance comes more close. Really, I think that yes, the mask is important, but it's not what happens. There are other layers that comes after, and that makes that thing important for you. Because the most important thing is that you create something that it was not exist, that I didn't thought that I could create this. And this is the important issue. Not that you study and you're trying to get to find a result. Said, okay, I found this result and I'm work a long time on this result. I'm working on this result, but I really like when I didn't expect this result. And this is my meaning. For example, let's see this photograph. I was doing a performance. Somehow a text was mixed with another text, and suddenly appeared Rockabye of Beckett in that text. We wanted to have that text in that performance, but anyway, what happened? It was one telephone that it was work wrong, give the wrong signal. So I had this at the same time that it was happening. This I was doing a move, so my trouser was falling. I couldn't do anything at all. It was in a gallery, and of course, with the trouser, all the trousers with my shoes was one. So I couldn't do anything just to get rid of that. So I decided to continue doing what I have to do. So I found myself without trouser and with a bucket in my mobile. I didn't know what to do. So I decided to just sit on that chair and to play the rockabye. And to find another meaning to that thing. And when I finished that, of course, I had my feet blocked because of that. I decided to crawl myself till the gallery was like 30 meters or whatever, like crawling, trying to stab a grenade. Was an image that I really had in mind to do from Geronimus Bosch, that he was stabbing a grenade with from how to say with a lobster that
Claw.
with a cloth lobster. So I did this. So sometimes, but I found it really good that happened, I think, because he opened to me something different that I never thought about this. So it's really the things that I like in art. When we have those things, I didn't reject those things. I embrace. I embrace the things that happen.
Can I ask? You refer to the text. is the text something that you create as you create the piece, as you create your mask? Do you work with somebody else's text? How does that happen?
Yeah, very good question. I work both. I work with the text of others that they are impressing me, or that I feel that I'm impressed about them. And I hear music. At the same time I hear music or I hear songs. Sometimes I mix the songs from the music that I hear with the text that I'm here, with the text that I want to create in the same level. Mm-hmm. Like the music and the text is part of the same text. I hear something on the radio at the same time, and I believe that maybe it's the right moment, so I'm going very fast and I write it down, because I put it on that monologue or that whatever thing that I want to create. But of course my love, let's say, is one, which is theater. So I can't escape that. Yeah. So I always compare myself to a text, to something that comes from theater. I wish if I could be different. Sometimes.
I was wondering if, this isn't a Twitter question, this is all me. I was wondering if we could talk a bit more about humor, because it's just interesting that you've introduced this method, the concept of the unexpected and the humorous. But we started with images of people suffering and being tortured by their illnesses, and I'd like to hear from both of you actually about the place of humor in your work and what you do.
Well, look, often it's quite. I think particularly in hospital, people are emotion is heightened in every kind of respect, and people are literally. Their barriers are down. They're in their pajamas. You know, they might be in bed. People are coming and poking them and doing stuff to them all the time. And so everybody has a sort of openness. And many people have had some kind of a sense of a brush with their mortality in some way. And so I think people are much more available, kind of emotionally. And I think that means that there's the potential for humour and tears and sadness, and certainly in the dance sessions we get, there is a really heightened emotional level throughout the time that we're there. One of the things that does is it changes the experience that staff have, because staff try quite hard and are encouraged to, and I think this comes back to that notion of how we've kind of medicalised health and well-being. But they try really hard to maintain a sort of professional demeanour and a sort of sense of propriety and all of those sort of things that are that are about being measured and wearing a uniform, which is a form of mask, and wearing, you know, and kind of carrying themselves in a certain way, rather than engaging on an emotional level, which might be about giving people a hug or laughing with them. And so I think quite often the job that we get. One of the things that we expect from artists engaging in those settings is to sort of be slightly almost transgressive in that way, that, you know, laughter is a kind of transgressive thing. So we did a project last year which was about happiness, and it was called Taking Note, and where we had artists coming in and interviewing staff and visitors and patients and trying to get them to say the one thing that kept them being happy in a hospital place. So a lot of people talked about their family members, or a lot of people talked about nature, but a lot of people talked about the things that made them laugh as well. And I think often it feels like you're kind of not allowed to laugh in a hospital, I think. But I think it's such a kind of empowering thing, and again that communal thing. But I
agree with you. It just come to my mind a piece that I did some years ago, but it was about Festo. It was the idea of to create, supposing Festo, and it was a figure who had a collar and had thorns on his face, supposing protection from the outside world, but at the same time it was the thorn that came from the inside. Was there. and he was performing a laugh, and at the same time the laugh was converted into a cry, and with the same words, with the same way of breathing, right? And at the same time the laugh to a cry, at the same time a cry returned to a laugh, and the laugh returned to a cry, and the cry returned to a laugh, and suddenly you stop, and you didn't know what is going to happen, and suddenly he laughs, or suddenly he cried, or suddenly he laughed and he cried, he laughed and he cried. So really, which is the center? Where is the center? We don't know, is unbalanced or is balance between laugh and cry. So this is the thing that happens sometimes when we're talking about things that just observing mental illness, and about how they treat these two emotions, laugh and cry. And of course, I'm not a specialist, so but I really like to observe. I like to observe, and as we said before, I observe so much the repetition, and that I like. But anyway, let's focus on that. That sometimes the laugh and the cry is going inverted, is come inverted as a feeling. And for example, I just remember that it was happening a long time ago, but it was in my neighborhood in Athens. When my father died, I went to the cemetery, and it was somebody was there, it was far away. So I heard voices. So he was just sat nearby to see what happened, what he's doing. So he was like crying. He was like crying, and then he started laughing, and then he was crying. And then he stopped laughing, he was crying, and then he started singing. And then he sing. And then he sing, and then he just relaxed, and then he left. So when we don't know the answer to laugh or to cry, maybe it's something a different spot. Then there is a song, and after the song there is something different. So the escape of the human mind, the escape of the human emotion, the escape of the human voice or liquids, they are always, we don't know from where it comes or where it ends. So for me it's equal to say, okay, he's laughing or he's crying, or it's like, it's equal powerful, right? It's my opinion. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but just observing. Yeah?
Well, and also that sort of when you, because I think sometimes artists can slightly, it's challenging, isn't it? It's kind of it sort of challenges a sort of status quo, and it's so if and one of the things that I think medicine often has is a real hierarchy of kind of expertise, and you get the sort of, particularly in a hospital, you have your consultants, and then your doctors and nurses, and actually anything that sort of suddenly sort of slightly upsets that can only be a good thing, I think, because it kind of slightly kind of throws things around, and I think laughter and kind of emotional displays kind of really do that.
I'm interested in the processes of processing. So when you're performing and you go back to your studios, obviously you're working through those emotions that you felt when you're performing, and then sort of relating those to your patients when they're dancing. So what's the process there of processing what they've experienced?
Very good question.
Do you have a process in place, or do they?
Yeah, there's quite. I mean, it is quite. It's a very structured kind of experience. Although superficially it doesn't feel like that. So it feels it's a room a bit like this. There's a circle of people. There's a professional dancer and a nurse in every session, and the sessions are people introduce themselves. Everybody kind of shares something about their day, and that's managed in quite a kind of measured way. And then there's a kind of process of sort of stretching and warming up into it. and then there will be dancing, and it's all led by the patients, so occasionally people can stand, but often it's seated. And then that will move, and then there'll be a period of kind of a rest. And then usually there's some stories start to get told in that. And as much that, although it's, you know, we call them dance sessions, as much as anything, there's storytelling, sharing things. Quite often there'll be a bit of singing, quite often laughter, sometimes tears, and it is quite a sort of sharing process. And then at the end, there's a kind of relaxation session. And sometimes patients can't make it all the way through a session, and sometimes people are too tired or not well enough. But and then finally there's this quite important period of where nurses and healthcare assistants return patients to their beds, and that's usually a period of kind of further sort of storytelling. And so it's kind of.
But you just talking about that just makes me think how far we've come from what would be a very natural rhythm of life, communal living, where actually, and still in other countries, less developed countries, singing, dancing, storytelling is a really integral part of everyday life, and it would not be out of place for people to be singing or dancing on the bus on their way into town. It's just the rhythm of life. And how far we've gone from that, and what a shame that we don't, we meet here and it's wonderful, but we're actually creating projects to do that because we've lost it. It's actually what we naturally have impulse to do. And by stripping people away and sort of living very isolated, we don't have that. We don't create those opportunities. And we do fabricate a lot of other structures in order to get back to where we are, like clubs or anything you're doing, all the things that you might just naturally do in your day-to-day life if you were living in a probably an honest, authentic way. And it just struck me when you said that, because I think there's a sadness there, actually for me, when I think about that. And I think it can be quite a superficial life that we live. And I think that's why, when I work with my people in my creative capacity, I feel most satisfied because you're much more authentic, because you're expressing yourself so naturally.
I think you're right, and you're right to point out that it's different in different societies as well, because there are a lot of other communities who are much more comfortable with that notion that kind of creativity is intrinsic to the well-being of individuals and of communities, and there are societies. So in Brazil, there's this interesting phenomenon of cultura viva, where small communities are being given resources to create creative opportunities as a public health tool, and I think I think the first step here is to slightly overturn this kind of notion that medicine has all the answers, because it really doesn't. And I think a lot of the things that are real challenges for the health service at the moment, like obesity and diabetes or dementia, the huge proportions of the NHS budget are being kind of are going towards. Are things to do with our lifestyle, and are things that we as communities could be better dealing with by incorporating creativity.
I think that also that there is something missing here in the society, because maybe at this time, maybe with what you do in the hospital, you're supporting people with illness and issues, but even people who doesn't have any issue, and we are here in the outside world, there is nothing for us in that sense. So I was, for example, looking to do art, drama classes, and there is nothing for grown-up people, just up to 18 and whatever. And I found that I come from Italy, so there is a little bit different possibly, and there are many more possibilities for adults to join in creative groups, so to develop their needs, of expression. And here is there is nothing like that. and it's very. This might be one source of illness.
Yeah, I think probably by bringing that, what you do there earlier, that you're saying, bringing it before you get ill,
yes.
is what's preventative.
But it's like, let's say, maybe if in my neighbors there were theatre groups or a place where people meet after work, after dinner, you've got, I don't know how many hours you want, if you want, or wherever you're there, and you can go to share the way you live, or, you know, you don't need a script, you don't need a play, but I did, for example, what's the word, psychodrama, which is a mixture of theatre and expressing your personal situation, issues, or just, you know, knowing yourself and being creative, I think.
But isn't it dangerous to open out too much of yourself to a group with no professional support? Because you take all the things that are raw and sore in yourself and you're sharing them with people that you don't know, and then you go home and you're still an open wound.
Well,
you have to be quite
think
careful.
that, well, of course, if there is a professional involved, this is much better, but I don't have such fear of sharing myself with others.
But then, is that because you're well?
No. No. It's just because I'm not well.
I wouldn't say it's just because she's not knowing who you are, but I know that I'm not well, and it doesn't hold me back from sharing.
Yeah.
I do believe that we can become more organically community minded. I've just come to a place where I've spent many years working really hard and having to do that, and I'm just about to take up what I was doing some years ago before I had to actually put it all down and work. During the working time, I have become quite ill, and I'm just about to pick up my spinning and my weaving and a whole load of things that are what that I was doing as a group many years ago, and we would get together with a couple of teachers, and we would talk, and we would grieve, and we would, whatever happened to come out in that group came out in that group, and it was really organic, and it wasn't dangerous. It really wasn't, because we were community, mostly women, but not all women. And it was, so many years ago when there was an awful lot of, does anybody remember things like macrame and stuff like that? And we were doing lots of crafts, and it was at that time. And and I loved those opportunities, and there weren't therapy classes at all. There were, you know, if we were making felt, we would be on the floor with our bums up in the air, hysterically laughing with loads of soap suds and things like that, you know, 30 women. And we had such a good time.
But that's the important thing, isn't it? It's to keep it so that you're having something that supports your well-being, that makes you feel good, rather than too much into the darkness, which I think would be dangerous for me.
Yeah, I mean, when I started to really have pain from fibromyalgia, I couldn't spin anymore, and you know, I was in a lot of pain. I was still going to classes, and along would come the teacher who had rheumatoid osteoarthritis, and she recognised what was going on with me before I was diagnosed, and gave me some pointers. And I said, how do you manage it? You are so ill. You have so many operations, how do you manage it? And she explained to me how she managed it. I thought, wow. You know, the first things about pacing, being authentic, learning not to do too much but still doing some, all the sorts of things we need to learn when we become a bit more organically involved. And I think actually at the moment we're very much separated off.
I think, in answer to your question, I think you should only share what you feel you can share, and you need to be you're accountable and you're responsible for that. But I do think there's a sharing, there's a healing process, and I love that podcast, The Moth, and I don't know if anybody else listens to The Moth, which is got to listen to it. I'm addicted, and it's set up in America, and there people are sharing true stories, and they're unscripted to a live audience. They are phenomenal stories, and the power of the storytelling is just so healing for all the audience. And you know, and I'll be there cooking, and I'm crying, and I'm laughing, and I'm learning, and I'm loving this life, and I can relate, and sometimes I can't relate, but it's there's something that it gives you something, and it connects you to everybody. It connects you as a human. I think it's really, really essential. So yeah, but yes, it's even the dark stories.
They are
helpful.
They are.
In a way, it's I don't know.
Especially the dark stories.
You love them. Get a mask on.
maybe what you. I have a phrase that just came up: feeding of others' grief. That's the dark thing that I think is unuseful.
Yeah.
When others say, "Oh my God, I'm so terrible," and everyone say, "Oh, really?" That doesn't bring anywhere. And I support you in this. So maybe is this the thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not about, being open is good.
Yeah.
But how open and what people do with your openness, and then also what you take away. Because if you've heard a lot of things that are other people's trauma, but if you're a very sensitive person, you take it inside yourself, and it almost becomes yours, and it's not helpful to you. You have to be careful. You have to know what your limits are, I think.
And I think it's about a spectrum of provision, really, and it's about, at one end there is art therapy, which people take years to qualify as therapists, and they work in a therapeutic way, and they have supervision, and they have support structures around them, and therefore they are, able to deal with people who are living with psychosis or schizophrenia, and then through to the other end you have the community choir or the community theatre group that is just about, might have broadly a sort of general well-being purpose. And I think I feel quite positive about the fact that there is more of this happening, and some of it is a bit of a sort of, there's the kind of Gareth Malone sort of, choir thing, but the new Secretary of State for Health has set aside some funds specifically for social prescribing, which obviously has a cultural component along with sport and other activities. And I think, and there's a lot of good kind of research emerging now about arts on prescription schemes and the impact that those sorts of things can have on people who are living with sort of mild to moderate depression or who are basically kind of socially isolated. So there's lots of those things I think are emerging, and I think that feels quite positive. But I think your point that in a way we're sort of retrofitting something that is a kind of almost more sort of primeval kind of urge that we've somehow banished, and that actually if we were a little bit more kind of better at sort of dealing with this, then there would be loads of theatre groups, there would be loads more to do, because we all benefit from it.
Life doesn't help though, doesn't it? It's our modern life at the moment that we live in, with all our time constraints and deadlines and financial situations, and that's just impeding on everything. So we have built up this construct of our lives that just makes it very difficult to be the real people that we are, to be free, to be expressive, to show love and warmth and care, to run around in a field, to sing down the street. We're all very linear and have to walk a certain way and talk a certain way, and I think it's going to take a long time for society to reconstruct in order that we can reconstruct to the people, the humans that we're meant to be, to experience those actual basic instinctual feelings and emotions, and the need to do and use our bodies and sing and perform. It's been squashed out of us, I think. So I just wanted to ask about your festival and relating to that then. So the public going to your festival in London. So if you talk about the festival a bit more. Yeah,
well, I was, as you were talking, I was thinking we run a festival every summer, and this summer just gone we did we had one day which was focused on music, and we had a big event in a care home, and it's the care home that you would dream to kind of live out your days in, or to have your mother, your grandfather, be housed in, because. And the main reason for me is because there is this huge range of kind of cultural activity that's sort of available in the home, and music and singing and dancing, and there's artists working there. And in a way, that the idea of the festival is to just try and showcase good practice, because that festival, one of the speakers at that day was the Chief Commissioner for Adult Services from the Care Quality Commission, whose job is basically to say whether care homes are good or not. And at the moment, the availability of cultural activity is not a criteria. So a care home is judged, on the basis, is it clean? Is there enough staff? The patients, the residents, are they fed properly? Do they have access to the doctor? Those sorts of things. Nothing about kind of the life of the soul or the mind. It's all about kind of, are they physically safe? And nothing about everything that really makes life worth living. And I think, and she was talking about the fact that it's a very challenging. We all recognise. She says the inspectors going into care homes know what quality is, because it tends to mean that there's singing and there's music and that there's painting, but actually, kind of, we haven't yet got to the stage where we sort of measure it in those ways. So the aim of the festival is to try and sort of bring those sorts of issues up to the surface and try and challenge those sorts of things. So
is it going to change?
She took that on board, actually. I mean, it's one of the other things that we've been quite involved with is kind of lobbying. So it was interesting that it was the chair of the all-party parliamentary group for Arts, Health and Wellbeing who asked her that question, that how about this gets written into CQC guidance. So it feels like there's pressure being put to bear around this sort of issue, which I don't think there was 5 or 10 years ago. And it feels like there's an enthusiasm and an interest in this area. So it feels like that's sort of changing. I didn't really talk about the festival, but it's creativity and well-being, and it's been a London event for the last 6 years, and it's now going to become a national event. So we're hoping that there'll be events all around the country.
I recommend it because I've been. So if I can just talk from a visitor. So there's events held all around London in different settings, and so you can go and look it up, but also you can take part in events. And one of them, I think it was at St Thomas's, I can't remember what hospital, but so this artist, and we had to lay on the floor and looking at our spleens, and so she was a visual artist but also a musician, so the musicians playing, their cellos playing, and then they had paper all along the floor, and you gradually moved along, and she came and massaged your spleen, and then you had to have your eyes closed, there's a massive atrium, and drawing around your body. And so the whole process took about half an hour, but it was the most, although you're in a massive hospital and there's people walking around and patients walking around, doctors and nurses running around, it was so peaceful and so relaxing. And so as a participant and as a visitor to the festival, I just found that invaluable, really, as to the power of arts in health and wellbeing.
Yeah, and the interesting, I mean, what comes out from the festival is, and even from this conversation, is that there is a lot of this work happening, and I think actually there's more and more of it happening now. But by its nature, it tends to be quite quiet. It's a small group of people, sort of gathering and crafting together, or it's people kind of almost, if you like, sort of self-medicating through their art or their practice, or or it happens in hospitals, but it's, our dance program is, by its nature, it's very private. So it happens in a day room, in older people's wards. The other kind of 40 wards in the hospital probably don't know it's happening. And what the festival seeks to try and do is kind of go, actually, there's all this stuff happening, and actually it deserves more attention, it deserves more kind of notice, deserves to be researched more kind of thoroughly. that is that. So.
And are we going to get our new Minister for Health to it?
Yeah, well, the All Party Parliamentary Group produced this report last year called Creative Health, which I do recommend. Which you can, if you go to artshealthandwellbeing.org.uk, there's a page to the APPG, and it's all there. And it is really.
What's the document called?
It's called Creative Health, and it's basically, it charts the life course. So it looks at children and young people, working age adults, older people, and end of life, and kind of looks at the different ways that the arts in different ways can kind of impact positively on all those different stages, and it's really authoritative, and it's a really good resource in terms of, and the interesting thing is that being produced by an APPG has kind of generated quite a lot of response.
Because I mean, there's all this wonderful stuff happening. I know, in London, big cities, but also small places like Corby, where I come from. And the powers that be can say, don't know what's going on, and that's really frustrating.
Yeah.
So if you're doing something that's got the heft to get them involved, I think that could be really valuable for all of us, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that's starting to come about is, because there's such pressure on money in the NHS, that things like social prescribing, all the indications are that it's much cheaper than or cheaper than kind of drugs that don't have any kind of impact. So I think there is a bit of a move around. There's interest around that as well.
Something I've found, and this is through experience, a lot of people my age are turning to the internet when it comes to art, and you find massive communities of people who share something in common that will come together online and create projects. Last summer I managed to get 70 people together. We were talking about our favourite band, and everybody created pieces of art and poetry about why this was so important to them. We sort of compiled it into a small booklet of sorts. And the reason this band was so important was because it was focused on mental health and coping strategies, and I do think it's a shame that you aren't really finding this beyond the internet, if you know what I mean. And you were talking about small communities. It would be amazing if people could sort of branch out from that, because the only reason I was aware is because it starts off on that platform. It's not really broadcasted, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I think the potential of the internet and things like podcasts to create kind of new ways of bringing people together to think about. I mean, you look at that kind of You, Me and the Big C, and the kind of phenomenon of that was in sort of kind of creating a space where people could talk about cancer in a new way.
And going back to what was said earlier about the fact that we're all sort of we're gradually becoming more and more isolated, and although the internet does sort of provide this window into another alternate reality in a way, you look at large projects such as Eric Whitaker's Virtual Choir, it's sort of bringing all of these smaller realities together, and again, why not? If this is the way things are moving, I think it would not exactly exploit it, but it would be really good if we could sort of use that even more, if you know what I mean.
Can I ask how many, if any, of your 70 participants you would recognise if you walked past them in the street?
Quite a few, to be honest.
Okay, so I mean, it was geographically.
So quite a few of the people from the project were from England. So there was Megan, Ethan, Reese. Quite a few people I've actually come into contact with.
No, in the real world, is it, or the me world, whatever the phrase is. Because I mean, the ability of the internet to connect us across the world is wonderful. But as you were sort of saying, it also divides us from one another, because we're like that on a screen rather than hello world.
I mean, it's probably because of the platform that I used to sort of bring this project around. We used Facebook, and of course on Facebook you have Messenger. And with Messenger comes the added opportunity to video message, etc., etc. So of course that's how I would be able to recognise these people, because I know them face value. There is the danger, of course, of using other platforms, and of course there's the issue with catfishing at our young age, etc., etc. But personally, I think that the internet gets more of a negative reputation than a positive, if you know what I mean, for the dangers that it can undeniably bring, if you know what I mean.
People, do you want to say something? Or,
No, I was just thinking about, now that you said about something about Messenger, it was just a reflection that I make. Generally, all these platforms, they have at the same time, which is something that is helping us a lot. At the same time, there is a danger, which is strange sometimes. I mean that, for example, if we put as an example Messenger, is a platform to communicate, and you think that the things that are so near to you than the distance that they really are. And that thing creates to the person a strange reaction, thinking that the things can be in that way, but the reality is that they're not in that way, but the medium brings you closer, but the thing doesn't mean that you are there.
It's kind of like a new way of storytelling, though, isn't it? Because you could be anyone you wanted to be, because you're not there in a physical sense.
Yeah.
You're there, and you can create the you that you would like to be, or the parts of you that you want to present.
Yeah.
And other people respond to that, so you can build on it. It's a very curious thing. It's closeness and distance, but it's also, it seems to me, about the divided self.
Yeah, it's about the divided self, and this, let's say, at the same time, I could call it, forgive my English, like a jail of feelings.
I mean, that's an interesting way of describing it, because while these online communities are really good when it comes to sharing, and you do particularly in the community that I'm part of, because it's very centered around mental health. You can also find that it can be quite overwhelming, because it becomes a platform to become emotionally drained, not only yourself, but to emotionally drain the people around you. So yeah, there can be a danger there as well.
Somehow, of course, art is a different thing. I mean, that art needs a platform. Is something different, but just I had that thought. Anyway, I thought you.
I would kind of agree with that. I think from the statement of kind of creativity and whatnot from the internet and from kind of social media, I can find from my personal experience, and obviously it's got quite an impact on my kind of generation, is the fact that it also has quite negative values because of the way these kind of things are structured. It means that it's quite, not to use the term competitive, but it's quite similar to that. And I think it doesn't encourage, because maybe because you don't interact with those people so closely because of the lack of proximity, means that it doesn't really create the feeling which would be of like teamwork or something. So if you had a team that worked together for a day, they wouldn't work together as well as somebody who, they would work together better than somebody who was maybe talking online for a week or something. So I think that kind of influences it, and that's why I think that the internet and social media will never really be a true platform for art in the way that real life is, because of that interaction and seeing the real person instead of just what people choose to portray of themselves.
So it's that connectivity between real human beings, that sense of the person that you can only get from physically being with them.
I would say it's false, but it's what people can choose to do, and that can be negative and positive.
You can say all sorts on by text or through the social networks, but actually face to face, would you do that?
Well, you could.
You can, but I'm saying a lot of people,
nobody knows
you can feel like you've shared and you're close, but actually if you saw that person, would you have that same conversation?
So
would you feel that close?
It's a mask, isn't it? So going back to masks, it's the...
Oh, full circle. Yeah, lobster.
The real and the...
Some spare telephone mobiles. Cost like the rest.
It was mentioned about the internet being a very lonely place, which then comes back to your work. Is art lonely? And I noticed that you...
And that work was started as a project that was invited by Joanna de Vos and Jan Fabre in Belgium to construct an idea of that project, because they start as a project based on the raft of Jericho. It was a painting like 5 meters by 5 meters, 5 something, near to 6 meters in the Louvre. And it was the raft, and there was a lot of bodies there. It was spread all over. I don't know if you remember the artwork. And the title was "The Raft: Art is Not Lonely." The title of that exhibition, "Art is Not Lonely." And they've had a lot of artists, over near to 70 artists, to creating projects for that exhibition. So I decided to do something different. I mean, to go to make the statement to a questioner. So I was asking, "Is that lonely?" And with that question, so I look my own London, to look the people that I know, to persons that I really admire in art, to ask them if they feel that art is lonely, to construct monologues and performances that they respond to that, and to bring my London, all the things that I found here, to this exhibition in Belgium, and to say, for me, is that lonely? Yes, this is the answer. I don't know if it's lonely or not, but this is the answer. So I had several wonderful answers on that I was doing some type of interview with some people of the art world that I was asking. One of them was Franco B, the performer. And of course, in all of that interviews, I was with a mask. I was wearing mask with flowers and things, depending. For example, with Franco B, I couldn't wear fish or lobsters and so on because he's allergic. So I could have, so I could wear flowers and so on, different things. With Lois Kidden of Live Art Development Agency, that we did another interview performance like this. I had no problem. Lois was touching the things. He's alive. So, with every person, you find what really attracts him to that matter, and what really attracts him about if art is lonely. And all of them, there was finished that art is not lonely. It was some good things that I've heard. For example, that. Lonely is something that you feel on your skin. Different expressions, different things, different ways of seeing all the thing that I combined with my own structure of things, of creating monologues, and I put all of them together in an installation, a video installation in Ostend, and I performed live on that performance. And the end was somehow related with the history, because we're talking about really if it's history, if the history of art, of we as part of the history of art, we feel that loneliness. And is art lonely now, then, and when? So for the end of the thing, I found a text that it was so emotive, from a friend and curator who is called Damian Hebron in Athens. And by the time Damian Hebron was curating the Documenta 9 exhibition in Kassel, along with Jan Hood and Pierluigi Tazzi. And in this Documenta, he had to face a strange event. They appear near to 45 German soldiers, ex-German soldiers of the Second World War, to do a guided, to ask him to make a guided tour. And as we can imagine, nobody wanted to do it, so he said, I would take the group. So the first thing that they do, that they appear with a book. They were like 8 to 9 years old. They were old people. And so they came with that book and they said, this is, we document with this kind of propaganda. That book was the German catalogue of the German art, degenerate art that Hitler did to promote the German art against the degenerate art we were showing these days. And so they said, we are these monsters, and we learned these lies, and these are the lies. We've been the monsters that we are, and we want you to show us all that we missed in our youth, and that we contribute to destroy ourselves. And they wanted, as he said in the text, to cut the line from the point it was cut. And so I use this text at the end of Is It Lonely, as at the end of the thing, in front of a big balloon that it was falling down in the stage. And the end of the thing didn't give any answer to the thing, because it was like some words from Werther of Goethe, Werther, who's saying that the tears that we do not cry, they are falling all in our souls, in our soul, and they are patient drops. They are hammering our sad and weary heart. So I finish like this. So there is no solution to humanity, really, about what has happened. So really, I don't know if art is lonely or what happened. But I think that the only thing that not make us lonely is to communicate the feeling, to communicate and to question ourselves and about things, and not to be like an horde of humans. That we all to have our own
worst enemy, because I don't know if you find as an artist you're in your studio, and so you get wrapped up being in the studio alone, and you need to be alone in order to produce and to think. But then you're on your own too much, and then I don't know, I'm speaking for myself here, then I become isolated, and then I forget what it's like to mix with people.
I agree.
And then I mix with people. Oh, this is what it's like to mix with people. This is great.
I remember, especially, I remember now that you said that when I go to the studio after of performance, or 2 or 3 days when I'm recovering, whatever, and the first feeling that I have is that I feel safe, that I'm not feel exposed. And the second feeling is that I can remember what happened there, and I can remember, and I start from the things that cause me danger. The inner danger, what I felt that it was danger. Danger not to succeed, danger not to make it, danger to falling down, danger because the lobster was inside my mouth and there was no solution. The danger because after whatever the meaning of the danger, then the meaning of the joyful things, then the meaning of the things that they will cause me pain, and then I will start like remembering all the things, but from safety position. And this is the studio for me, is the safety position that you still keep watching and interpreting the world since your safety, and is the only place that you can feel safe, really, if you are an artist. Though there are some incredible people in galleries that are really nice persons, really your safety place is the studio or is what is behind your mask. If you don't have this distance to have, so that you...
Once you've made the work and it's gone out there, you can't really control what happens to it, so there's that danger that it's kind of gone from you, and although you might feel positioned, but that's
really you never know what is going to happen. I mean that this is the part of the work. I really want to keep it that way, because the thing is that you don't want to create a subject, something that to be so control freak, to put everything together, because even if you do that thing, all the energy will escape there and you will lose from all the other parts that you're doing. The thing of creating something fast and to try with that thing fast to create an art piece has its own danger. You always can fail something, but as Beckett said, fail better. So you don't have another way out on that. It's art. I mean that my father used to say, especially in the theater, he said the word of the actor is like the word of the fireman. One day in the stage you're gonna get burned. No stage, and you burn on stage, and that's it, and everything is finished. I mean that it can happen in art. It can happen so many times. It's a dangerous profession, though we don't know, and though even if we do not think that it's a profession. Personally, I don't think that it's a profession, because I think it's a way of being, because I couldn't do anything else. All the other things that I tried to do in my free time, I was returning to art. I can't.
It's interesting. Also, it's not really a plug, but it's that idea of the danger is something that I feel very, very aware of, and we're actually running an event next week, looking at what support there is for artists when they're particularly working around health and well-being, because I think it is, moving beyond gallery practice to working with, and it relates back to those questions about kind of groups and the support and the what you need in order to, and I think there are, it's a whole nother topic, but is kind of, the sort of well-being of artists is a really relevant question. Moving beyond the questions about how they financially live, but I think there are issues, not just about the isolation of the studio, but about kind of what it takes out of you, what that practice does take out of you, because while we extol the virtues of creativity, I think there are huge kind of dangers as well.
We've got a lot of artists in this room. Yes, I'd be interested to know the outcome of that, actually.
Yeah, well, we are going to, we're getting somebody to document it and to put together some resources around it, so I'll make sure.
Is that available to attend?
Yeah, it's a free event. It's on the 18th in London in the morning.
18th September.
Yeah.
Has anybody got any other burning questions or?
I have a question, but I don't know. It's a little bit complicated. So you said that sometimes we say lies, and the mask helps you to say the truth. So I think maybe being an artist, do you think you need to lie in order to say the truth through the masks? Or can you just tell the truth as an artist?
Okay, so let's invert it. Imagine that we're talking about a theatrical character. Imagine that we're talking about Tartuffe, for example. Tartuffe, if he's acting honest, then he's a liar. If he's honest, then he's a liar. If you're acting honest and you are a liar, then you are a marvelous actor.
Once you can fake sincerity, you've got it.
Yeah. So the thing means that when we see the reaction on what are we talking about and which reaction, then you can be a fake saint, but fake saint means that you are a wonderful actor. What is exactly the subject that we want to treat? If the subject is art, if the subject is even to hide the part of us and to talk with metaphor about something that everybody knows that we're talking about us, but we don't not even want to say yes, it was me that was there. That a lot of times it happens, especially in Beckett's play, that he say, it was me, I was there, it was him, it was the other, was inside, I was outside, I was there. What is inside, what is outside from the place, from the self? So, all the things, if you don't want to put things out, get things in, and so on, then you play metaphorically. Then you work with a lie that that is true to some others, but is not your truth. And with this truth, we say your truth was looking there and not there. So is that? Yeah. Okay.
Very confused.
I'm confusing so much. Huh?
How difficult was it in growing up to have a father who was an actor? Was he ever off? Was he ever just a person, or was he accessible?
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
And do you find that you, as an artist who performs, are more able to be authentic, open, and accessible?
Yeah, that was helping me a lot.
Yeah.
That was helping me a lot. Okay, I saw the thing that I saw in the character at home. I'm saying character because it was like a character 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So this character who was depending on the play, he was walking with one feet, or he was hurting the other feet, you know, the days and night, and it's hurting me. And suddenly I saw that the thing would happen in the theater. He would do it there. I mean, that all the thing that is part of life that comes to become his body, I get distance from that. So I saw all the things that sometimes I know how to do it. I know how to feel it. I know because it was my resistance to go there and to understand it. As sometimes, as I said, if a mind needs to go in the other person's mind to get it, to understand what it wants to say, but he needs to get out also to your own self. I did it, so I came back. So I know what is happening, but I know also to make this division, to put the thing there and to stay there. Yeah. I think that I make it.
And do you think that the masks are helpful to keep that division?
Yeah.
Yes. So they're a good thing.
Because for me,
we're seen as a mask is seen as, you know, deception, but actually your mask is a protection.
It's a protection.
Yeah.
It's a protection. He's keep saying a protection, and the amplifier with security of the inner voice. Yeah.
I'm afraid we're running out of time for questions. Absolutely fascinating discussion.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
I know. We've covered everything from masks and protection and well-being of artists and loneliness and art in hospitals and government hopefully funding and changes, and hopefully there's a movement to recognise this on a national level as something we need to happen for all our sanities. So thank you very much, both Filippos and Damien. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So a few closing words and to do a bit of promotion. So we have 2 upcoming events to tell you about. So very exciting, this Friday between 5 and 7 p.m. we have a launch and celebration at the Arches at Finechay Wood. We are celebrating Fermi Wood's Contemporary Art's 20th anniversary, the Forestry Commission's 100th anniversary, and sees us expanding our programme into Finechay Woods. The Arches will serve as a project space and artist studio for the Forest as the Museum, our programme of artists and associated artists. So, join us to hear about our plans for the space and view work by our first artist in residence, Edwina Fitzpatrick. We then have our next wild learning event, and this is another hard word to say, rhythm analysis, yes, with artist and filmmaker Jenny Holt on the October 20th. So participants will spend the day using technology and nature to create a unique narrative of our surroundings. Details for this event can be found on our Eventbrite page. And also I've been asked to advertise another wonderful project called Sound Bath. So this is a Deep Roots Tall Trees project, and Deep Roots Tall Trees was founded by Rosalind Stoddard, who also happens to be Fairy Woods founder, so very busy person. So this is on Friday the 14th of September, and it sounds amazing actually. So experiencing deep relaxation through music, become bathed in sound. So that's fantastic.
And there is time to do both.
Yes.
Yes, you can do both. I'd like to say thank you for all to coming and people watching online. Thanks to Martin for the live streaming. The Arts Council have funded this evening. And thanks to Johnny's Happy Place and YouthWorks for hosting us. So thank you.